Tribe. Happy Monday. Hope you're having a good day. So I wanted to do a video to go along with the post that I wrote yesterday, which kind of in some ways blends itself to the post I wrote yesterday about intentions. And that's giving space to the things that we are afraid of and what stops us from giving full permission to our intentions and desires. So this is, again, kind of intuitively something that I felt like talking about today. So one of the things that is often part of my process every day is when I come into the group, it's like, what do I share today? What do people need to hear? And this is something that I've been kind of playing with, I guess, this theme, both myself and again with sort of the tribe. So here we go. So I want to just get down to kind of illuminating something that we often do, which is we don't actually give permission to the things that we want. And what stops us from doing that, or why, or what are we afraid of? And so one of the things that I noticed for myself is, and I'll do this, I'll have like, where it kind of often shows up, well, I mean, I think there's a couple different places. I think that this is something that can be true for our business. It can be true for our personal lives. It can be true for our relationships. I try to sort of speak to kind of the undercurrent of themes that really lend itself to whatever place that we're in our life. It can extend itself to all of it. So I was kind of noticing and sitting with this myself, where we have places where we feel uncomfortable, or maybe there's a gap that we're in lack, so whether it's we don't have enough money in our bank, or we don't have the relationship that we want, or we don't feel clear. I think it also goes into feeling clarity around our purpose, or, the things that we're holding space for. And I think that one of the reasons why we don't have what we want is we're not actually creating the space for it to come to us. And I really believe sort of in the philosophy that we, I think, are the keepers and the creators of the things that happen in our life. As equally as I believe in the universe and all of that stuff, I know that a lot of the times there's a disconnect or a thing where things aren't manifesting. A big part of it is because I'm not giving space to it in my life or within myself. So I was sort of chuckling to myself this weekend as I was, thinking about my finances and everything, because that's something that I think about a lot, having a large overhead and, carrying things on my own. And realizing that, I've basically been able to manifest everything that I've asked for. I can look at my month financially, and I can look at, the clients that have been coming in, and, it dawns on me, and this happens sometimes. I do this a lot, especially I'll notice that I'll do this a lot, especially when it comes to finances. So I'm speaking to this specifically for this example because I notice it for myself, where I'm always in this place of I either get exactly like what I need to the T, and then it still kind of gives me a gap of it's not completely enough. So it's still a little bit uncomfortable. And what I'm really wanting is I really want to have an excess. Like I'd really love to, as a self-employed, entrepreneur, that I'd love to have an excess of resources in my bank, that it's not like I have to go out and figure out how I'm going to manifest this money to pay this bill this month, but that it's already there. And I was thinking about that, and I was noticing the resistance around that, right? So I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid of having too much. And some of the things that I'm afraid of around that is, I think that, and this is, I think, what's important about why we stop ourselves from creating space for something. Because I think that we unconsciously do it, and if we don't put attention or illuminate the why, we can't change it. So I would sort of say, as you're kind of going along this journey with me on this video, if you think about something in your life, or maybe it's a few things, that feel like there's a big gap between what it needs to be. So you're not satisfied, or you feel lack, so maybe you're not making enough money a month, or you don't have the relationship that you want, or you're not feeling very clear on your purpose. So think of something that's maybe creating a lot of discomfort for yourself right now. And it's uncomfortable, and maybe you have some resentment around that, right? Like, why is this the way that it is? And maybe it's something you've been struggling with for a while. I want you to spend some time to really think about what is keeping me from really actually holding the space or asking for the fullness of what I want. Because I notice for myself, sometimes I don't even ask for what I need because there's a discomfort that I have that it means I'll be too greedy, or I'll take from another. Or, one of the things that I notice that I hold for myself is there's like a quota of good that I'm allowed in my life. You can only have a certain amount of blessings and abundance. before, you know, you're just being greedy. So I noticed for me where I hold back sometimes on, you know, creating more affluence or more abundance in my life or my practice is because I have this fear and I'm afraid. Or I was talking to a client last week and we were talking about finances and money, and both of us were sort of talking to how uncomfortable it feels if we had an excess. Like, one of the things that happens if I start to have a lot of abundance coming in, it's almost this panic of like, I don't know what I would do with it. What would I do if I had like more money than I knew what to do with? It's sometimes the discomfort of that. I think we can sometimes feel more comfortable in the struggle. So what's an important part of this process is we look at, what are we afraid of? If something isn't coming to us, why is that? And so one of the things that I notice is a common one for me, especially around, you know, abundance and stuff, is I don't want to feel greedy. I don't want to feel like I'm uncomfortable feeling that if I have an access or I have more, other people will be uncomfortable for it, or they might judge me for it. And so there's a fear of like, I don't want to be isolated or to be attacked for it. There's also this place of, you know, maybe we're afraid that if we have more, it means we have to work harder. So there's a belief that I don't want to exhaust myself. You know, I'm not a big believer in hustle. So sometimes the fear is, if I want to make more money, what does that mean? Or does it mean that I have to charge like an extraordinary amount more? And then what if I abandon my tribe if I do that? So there's all of these sort of hidden unconscious beliefs and limitations that circulate around us that we're blind to or we're not aware of. So I think it's always a good practice for us to really look at what's happening underneath there that's causing me to really not step into the trueness of what I want, and why. So if you're feeling inclined, or this is kind of resonating for you, my invitation is to create some time and be a little bit honest with yourself of what am I holding back on, and why is that? What am I afraid of is going to happen if I have these things that I want? And on the flip side of that, you know, what is it that I really want? I notice I'm somebody that I can tolerate a lot of things that are maybe uncomfortable. I've noticed this as a pattern in my life. There's certain situations or circumstances that I can stay in for a very long time that I'll kind of tolerate because I can. I'm easygoing and I'm laid back, and there's a lot of things that I can you know, have. And I think a part of that is, again, I don't know if it's because I'm trying to stay humble, or I don't want to be greedy, or I feel like sometimes it's an unworthiness thing. We don't feel worthy of having more. But I was noticing this week of also like, what are some things that I'm really tolerating right now that are starting to feel really uncomfortable? And why am I tolerating for that? Like, why am I not, you know, so one of the things that I like to sort of say, if I had full permission, if I wasn't afraid, if I didn't think that there was limitations, if I didn't believe that I was taking from anybody, what would I really hold space for? What would I really ask for? And I think that sometimes that evokes a lot of like, you know, for me, sometimes what it gets evoked from there is this place of, am I allowed to? Am I allowed to? You know, sometimes we have that little bit of an insecurity. Am I allowed to ask for that? I remember going through a breakup of my last relationship about 3 years ago, and I was reflecting after I went through this relationship how I was sort of in this place of I was with somebody that wasn't probably super kind, okay? He wasn't abusive or anything, but he wasn't super uplifting of myself. And I remember kind of thinking about, you know, I always look at after I exit a relationship, it helps me get really clear about what I want. You know, contrast equals clarity. And I remember thinking to myself, what I really want is I really want to be in a relationship with somebody who lifts me up as much as I do them, who's kind and who's generous. And there's a part of me that sort of was like, am I allowed to ask for that? Am I allowed to ask for being treated like that, or to have something in my life like that? And it was almost this sort of place of insecurity, like, is that allowed? Do I have permission? Is that, and so it's a vulnerability, I think, sometimes for us to expose our true desires. And I don't know if it comes from the place of, you know, I can maybe think for myself, often where things are rooted is in our childhood, right? So I can think of, you know, I've had people tell me a lot of my life that the things that I dream about are like delusional and crazy and out there, right? I remember telling my cousin when I was a teen that I was going to have a farm, and I think he laughed at my face and said, yeah, right, good luck. So I started to feel very protective of my dreams. But then I think it also got to the point where not only was I being protective, but I also was dampening them down because of, you know, maybe the feedback that we got. And sometimes, you know, we can people get envious or they get jealous of the things that we have in our life, and it causes us to retreat. So I think a lot of what happens is when we create an impact out there, you know, if somebody's uncomfortable with something that we have, what if you're like me, what ends up happening is I retreat. And, you know, one of the things that I was feeling really this week is sort of looking at, why do we do that? And why do we give power away outside of ourselves and then just kind of go along with it? It's like we don't even question that. So yes, I'm going to shut the door on this, or I'm going to not ask for maybe abundance. I'm going to ask just to pay my bills each month, because if I do any more than that, I might rock the boat, or I might make someone uncomfortable, or I might, you know, we all have, I think, places in our life or people in our life or situations in our life that maybe have had a negative reaction or response to something really great that's happened to us. I know that I've had, in the last couple years, as I started to actually create more success in my business, and part of the reason why I held back from that was I was afraid that I wouldn't have friends, is I did have some people in my life that, you know, started to treat me differently, or they were uncomfortable, or they just are not in my circle anymore. So that happens, and that can be hurtful. You know, I think as a sensitive person, as an empath, of course that hurts my feelings sometimes, but I think what happens is, where we take it a little bit too far, is we shut down on ourselves. So there's an encouragement, I guess I feel, and I've been feeling it in myself in my own life, of where we have to stand in our power. And I'll tell you kind of where that sort of was triggered for me. I shared in a post, I think, I do a reading with this woman every year. I do kind of an Akashic reading. It's something I do every year just to kind of give me affirmation of the things that I feel energetically attuned to for my year. And I had this reading, and one of the things we talked about was finances. And I sort of shared, you know, laughingly, of course, we're going to talk about business, finances, and love, because, you know, that's just what we talk about. And she said something to me about, you know, we talked about, like, what's the number that you need? And I sort of played it, I watched myself play it safe. And here's the thing that I think is very interesting. I said a number that felt comfortable to me, that felt like I've done this before, so I can probably do it. And I noticed there was a twinge, and here's the funny thing that happened. It was a twinge because I wasn't actually asking for what I needed. And so I kind of chuckled, and I said, well, here's the number. And I said, well, actually, it would be more like this. If I was making enough money to pay all of my bills and also put a substantial amount of money down on my debt. And like, gosh, wouldn't it be nice to then have some money for, like, myself, you know, to maybe travel, or to, like, update my passport that has been expired for 2 years. And I started to think about all of these things, and I noticed, like, oh God, can I ask for that? But at the same time, there was sort of like this urge to yes. And then she kind of chuckled to me and said, all right, so here's the number that I got. And then we talked about it, and I was like, that's like, feels astronomical to me, like astronomical to me. But at the same time, when she said it, it's like, but there was something about it that also felt very inspiring. And then she said another number, and I'm not sharing it because it doesn't really, the number's not the point. It's more of the energy behind it. And she said something, this is actually the number they're saying to me because it represents you being in your power. And something really, really landed for me in that. It wasn't the number, it was that she associated with, this is about you holding your power. And I was like, ooh, that hit me right here. And I feel like what happens to us is we unconsciously give our power away a lot to things that have happened that have hurt our feelings, or, you know, to other people that have had hurt feelings about what we've done. And we feed it power and we shrink. And so there was something about when she said that number, and she said, this is about you holding your power, that really resonated really deeply with me and reminded me that I want to live my life in resonance to being empowered in myself. And I don't think any of us want to give our power away. You know, we don't sit here and say, what I really want to do is I really want to give my power away to anybody that's ever hurt my feelings, or was a naysayer, or got triggered by what I did, or to give it a power away to my fears. We don't sit there and say that, like, please let me give away my power to everything outside of myself. We don't do that unconsciously. I don't think what we do. But what happens is when we shrink ourselves, or we don't give permission to, or we unconsciously are not aware of the beliefs and the old hurts that we're operating through, that's what we're doing. So when she said to me, this is about you holding power, I was like, oh yeah, that lands. And so I could feel that, like, really deeply, that my intention, it's not about chasing a number. It's actually about, what does it look like for me to step into holding my power? in what I do, because that feels true and that feels authentic and that feels like it almost makes me emotional. That's how I want to live my life. And so when we give permission to things, that's what we're doing. We're taking our power back and we're living in alignment. And we have to know this, that I really believe this. When we stand in our power, that's inspiring. That's where we're able, I think, to lift people up. And, you know, I'm going to talk to you about, this is Athena medicine that's coming through. Yeah, okay, good. Athena medicine. So I have this mare named Athena, who I named after the goddess Athena. And she's a 29-year-old Arab mare. And she's probably been one of my greatest teachers in holding a higher standard for myself as a facilitator and in my life. And I think she's saying, like, oh, I think I can feel her saying to me, it's about damn time you start listening to me a little bit more. Sorry, I'm sure she is standing right here. She'd be giving me a look. So Athena, I remember sort of feeling like, so this is Athena as a teacher in horse medicine. She will not give you the time of day if you are not in a space or a vibration that she wants to work with. So if you're in your fears, your insecurities, she's just like, does not want anything to do with you. And so a lot of people often feel rejected by this mare. And I sort of joke, like, if she gives you the time of day, you should feel very honored and appreciated, because but what it is actually, she has a standard of, if you're going to meet with her, you're going to meet her in your place of power, and she will not stand for anything less. And I probably, one of the most powerful, there's certain sessions that I've witnessed with my horses that have left like huge lasting imprints on me. And there's one with Athena. I had a group of women come out to my old facility, and there was one woman that really was connecting with Athena, and Athena was totally ignoring her. And she felt really rejected. And so she came back, and I actually sent her out in the field, and I said, here's the deal with Athena. She'll connect with you when you're in your authenticity and you're in your power. But if you're walking out there feeling like I'm not good enough to be around her, then she's like, she doesn't want to have anything to do with you. And her medicine and her power is she asks you to meet, to rise up, to meet her. She's not coming down to your level. And, you know, she kind of shared with me as a facilitator, the most powerful thing you can do is invite and call someone forth to meet you, not to go down there on their level. It's sort of like, you know, me and my metaphors, but the visual of someone is, say, like stuck in a well. And you're like, I'm going to help you out of the well, and you jump in the well. Well, now you're both stuck in the well. You're not helping that person out. But if you give them the rope, if you throw them a rope for them to climb out of the well, and you hold the rope on the other side, they get themselves out, and you're standing up on the other side. So she was really, you know, I feel her medicine sometimes when I notice as a caregiver and a nurturer. I really want to be empathetic to where my clients are, but we can't go to where they are. And I think it's the same thing for, you know, the people in our life that might get triggered to these things. We want to sometimes make them more comfortable. So we go down there, and we're not actually here to make people comfortable. You know, I want to inspire people. I want to open doorways of possibility. I'm not going to do that if I stay within my own comfort zone, or I stay small or stay hidden because I'm afraid of, you know, making people uncomfortable. So anyways, back to the session. So I sent this woman out to the field, and I said, here's the deal with Athena. She will meet you in your place of authenticity. So you go out into that field and work through whatever you need to work through. You know, those limiting beliefs and those doubts and those fears that you're not worthy of her, you're insecure, until you get to the place where the part of you knows that you are worthy of it, and she'll meet you there. And so sure enough, I watched this woman go. It probably took about a half an hour. And I watched her, you know, and Athena initially just moved away every time she moved close, because she was kind of in her mind chatter. And then eventually she sat down at one point, and I think to just really land. And then I watched Athena come closer to her, and then Athena actually lay down in front of her and put her head in this woman's lap. And like, it was just profound. And it was powerful because, like, she really demanded that this woman get to that place, and she did. And the moment that was created there was spectacular, it was magical. If I had the picture in here, I would share it. It's probably on my computer somewhere. And I think the point of it is she really epitomizes that you hold your power. And it is uncomfortable when we make people uncomfortable, but the most profound thing that we can do for ourselves and others in our life is when we refuse to hold anything but what we know we're capable of. And so this is a theme that I will carry forward in my life of what does it actually look like for me to hold this? And it doesn't necessarily mean I have to go do a big bravado thing in the world, but it does mean that I have to really look at the places where I'm not doing that. And so I think that looking at our fears of why am I afraid and working through that, and then being courageous enough to choose a different truth, that I am worthy of my desires. If I knew that I was worthy, if I knew that I was capable, if I knew that holding my power and the true value of who I am in the world inspired others, what would I open doors to? What would I give space to? What would I give permission to? You know, so this number that this woman came in my head, I was like, all right, cool. Like, what if I let myself be open to that? I don't have to worry right now about the how. Like, how the fuck am I going to do that? It's more, I want to give space to that. And I want to be conscious of where are all of the places that I've shut myself down over the years because I'm afraid of the impact I might have if I open those doors. And I think that, you know, we're afraid of being powerful. I think we're afraid of being in the fullness of who we are, because I think, you know, we get that feedback there. And I'll tell you something, you're going to trigger people. That's just part of the deal of being human. You're going to trigger people. That's what we do. It's their journey. It's not yours. And I think, again, we have to be, the thing that I always ask myself is, yeah, yay, Camille. The thing I always ask myself is, what are the consequences of me living in order to make somebody else comfortable? Or, you know, not rocking the boat. Those consequences affect me. It's uncomfortable. I think we get uncomfortable because we're shutting ourselves off from things that are meant for us and that we want for ourselves. That's what's uncomfortable. So I sort of, that kind of jolted me awake a little bit and was like, shit. And then I got to look at my life and like, what the fuck am I tolerating right now because I'm afraid or I've given power away to somebody else? What are those places? And the first step is really starting to identify what are those places. And then what am I afraid of? You know, I think I always sort of like to regularly come back to this place of, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid I'm not worthy. I'm afraid that I'll take from, oh good, I'm glad you're loving this. Great. It's good. This is good stuff. If I could have Athena in here, I'm sure she'd love this, but she's out in the, unfortunately, I cannot do these live streams with the horses, otherwise I would, but I can feel this is very much Athena medicine. You know, so what am I afraid of? You know, I think it's very good for us to get very transparent and very honest with us and not lie to ourselves or be in denial of where we're maybe borrowing or wearing somebody else's version of what we want for ourselves, because that's what makes them comfortable. I know for, like, you know, here's an example, my mom, who, by the way, thinks it's like totally outrageous how much money I make. She like cannot even fathom the amount of money I make now. And so one of the things she's constantly saying to me is, she's like, I don't know how it's possible for you to make more. Like, it's crazy how much money you make. Because she's never made that much in her life. Even though my family grew up with money, my mom's never made that much money in her life. So I have this like programming that I hear from my mom that, number one, it's impossible. Number two, it's like, it's almost unfathomable. And I wonder if it makes her uncomfortable. Now, my parents want me to succeed, but I find there's a part of, you know, the people pleaser in me, or I want to seek approval from other people that, oh God, I can't make more money than that, because then they'll really think things are outrageous, or maybe my parents will disown me, which of course would never happen. But these are the things that we do. We sort of create these stories. So again, I think the invitation to you are, what are the stories that you have been creating, or you've been assuming, or you've taken on from other people that are really preventing you from creating space for the things that are actually more in alignment with you? And yeah, amen. So that's the first thing. And what are you tolerating? You know, what intentions, what visions, what desires, what wants are you living through that don't belong to you, that belong to society, that belong to your parents, that belong to, you know, ex-lovers or relationships that you've adopted and taken on that you're living through? So that's, I think, the first thing to do, is we want to just declutter what we're holding. So this is something that I will be also doing this week as well, because I've been feeling this coming up. So everything I share is a process that I do too. And then on the flip side of that, if you were outrageous with giving permission to the things that maybe reflected you being in your place of power, if that resonates for you, or my place of authenticity. And how do we know that? I know that I'm creating things that are in alignment with my truth because I feel it here. There's a spaciousness, there's just a deep resonance of like, oh God, that hits, that's here. I feel that in my heart. And sometimes when we don't feel that, it means that we're either not going big enough, really. I think sometimes we're going too small, or we're not sort of on track. So give yourself some room to play with this week. And if, by the way, if this was a paid program, I'd be like, this is your homework, but I can't force you to do anything, but I'm giving you good stuff. If I were outrageous in what it looked like for me to hold my power and to follow my truth, and to not then go into a place of like, how am I going to make it happen? Just forget about that for a second and just give space to it. What would it be? If I had full permission, if I had the green light from everybody in my life, if I had, full permission from the universe and full permission from myself, what would it be? What picture would I paint for my life? And what would that look like? Would I travel? Would I let myself make more money? Would I fall in love? Like what are those places? Would I really kind of get my shit together? One of the things that I've been really noticing is an example of like, I've kind of been tolerating my debt. Now, in some ways, like this is what feels outrageous to me. Is it outrageous to think that I can pay off all of my debt in a couple years? Maybe, maybe not. Am I tolerating the fact of, being able to like put the majority of what I be making to just operate and not, I'd love to pay off all my debt in a couple years. That would be awesome. So why am I not giving space to that? Why am I just sort of saying, well, lots of people have debt and I could have debt for 15 to 20 years of my life and that'd be fine. I'd like to see what I can do about that. So like those are the different places. So those are the things that I'm looking at, or what am I tolerating, or even like, what am I tolerating of like habits for myself, that aren't in the position of power, right? One of the things that I'm doing for the first time in probably 2 years is, I'm terrible at taking time off for myself. This is an example. And I think there's like small examples of this and there's big examples of this. What I've always said I'd really love to create is I'd really actually love to create where I have like about 6 weeks off every year, but basically where I can just be in creation mode. That's not going to happen this year. But to just take time off. And for the last 2 years, I haven't really been great at taking time off. I maybe take time off once a year, but I felt the urge like I need to get away, if not every quarter, every month. And so one of the things that I say, so I tolerate is not taking space for myself, because there's all these stories of I can't afford to, I can't leave the ranch, it's not responsible, blah, 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 blah. I can't spend money on myself. Like it's really fucking hard for me to put money back into myself. Really easy for me to spend it on my business, my horses, not so easy to do on myself. So this is a small example. So I wanted, what does it look like for me to live in alignment with my deeper truth and my power and really honor the things that I get? So I actually booked a cabin for this weekend off the grid so that I can sit, because there's things that I feel like I need space to create and I need the space to create it. So I'm doing that and it's terrifying me, but I'm doing it. So I'm doing it this weekend. That's an example. And then part of it is when I'm in that space too, is I can really listen to what are the places that my soul is leading me, that my heart is leading me, that the full possibility of what's possible is trying to make its way through, so I can step into creating something magnificent for my life. And I know this is possible because I did it with this ranch, right? So I've been through this cycle before. I lost a little bit of it because when I bought this ranch, the reality of having a business like this, and then, my parents being investors, I got very infiltrated again with all of that baggage and stuff. So it kind of brought me back down to, I can't be in the full expression of who I am. So I'm kind of reclaiming that for myself this year. And so part of it is going back to that space of permission. And what does it look like for me to hold my power? And I don't have to tell people I'm doing this. It's not like I'm going to like ring my parents up or call people in my life and say, this is what I'm stepping into. But I'm holding the space energetically within me. And I think that that's really the most important piece. We can still be discerning, and I actually really encourage it. There's times where it's not appropriate to let people know, what our visions are, especially if we're feeling vulnerable. So we absolutely can still have boundaries, 100%. but we want to give ourselves the space to do it internally. So in your journal, if you have a really close friend that you feel really safe in saying, these are the things I really feel like I want to give space to this year, or that I really want to step into that feel really important to me. If you want to confess it and share it with them, do so, and do it in your journal. And I'll tell you something, energetically, when we create openings like that, it's incredible what happens on the other side of it. So I really kind of encourage it that this is, if nothing else, but doing this process for yourself in your journal, that's going to be huge. And then, then the practice becomes of what does that look like for me to visit this energy every day of my life, and to let that energy guide me forward. And maybe that means I think that's a whole other video. I'm trying to but the first thing we want to do is give space to it within us first. So if this is really resonating with you, which again, I think that oftentimes I find when I'm speaking about something, it's actually giving me the answer of how do I do this thing? So how do I manifest this thing that I want to manifest? This is your answer. Look at the places and the stories that aren't serving you, and find your place of, permission, where you write out and you give space to the things that you really want to birth into your life, that really reflect the trueness of your desires and what reflects you standing in your power. And you write it in your journal, and you nurture it here. And that goes a very long way. That goes a long way. So that's what I'm offering to you guys and feeling inspired to share with you. So take it however you want to take it, run with it. If you feel courageous enough to share it in the space, go ahead and share that. But I think sometimes, again, it can be a very powerful declaration that you share with yourself in the universe. So I know it's something that I'll be kind of percolating with this week and creating space for, of, again, going through and being very honest. I think I will say this. Don't be afraid to really get transparent with yourself. Don't hold back. Where am I holding back? If I could honestly reflect that to myself, what old stories do I notice I'm circulating? In honesty, and transparency, and do it with curiosity, not judgment, right? I think that's an important piece. Don't judge yourself for it. We're humans. We do this. That's kind of our deal. Don't judge yourself for it. Don't get to the place of, oh shit, I can't believe that I've not given space to the things I want for the last 10 years or whatever. Be curious and be light about it. If, that's sort of, I always look at is I'm being curious in my honesty, not judgmental. So that's a really big thing. And then if I let, again, my soul and my heart lead me forward and paint the picture of what I'm feeling called to step into and create, what would that be? And write that down. That's it. Questions, comments, let me know. If it inspires, and here's the thing too, also guys, if you are loving what I'm doing in this space, and people that would maybe benefit from being in the soul tribe, invite them in. So I'm always happy to add more peeps to the tribe. Or if you want to share this video, I think you can share it. I think you can share the video, so you can share it if you want to share it. So if that's something you want to do too. And again, I always love hearing how things resonate with the tribe. So if you want to ping me up and let me know, that's great. And then that's it. That's it. And then as a side note too, I'm going to probably be experimenting and sharing a little bit more in the space this week about some of the offerings and stuff too. But if anybody is looking for, obviously one of the things I do is I hold space for possibility and manifestation of, the things that we're called to bring forward into our lives with our purpose, with our medicine, and also, within ourselves. I'm kind of good at that. If you are looking for a deeper level of support and you want to work with me one-on-one, I do that. So definitely connect with me if you want to explore that. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about, I'm tweaking some of my one-to-one spaces. And then of course there's time to come for private with the horses and I too. So if you're wanting kind of the next level shit, and being in a place of magic, which would be at the ranch, there's ways to do that. So that's that. Okay, so I'll be sharing a little bit more about that this week. And otherwise, this stuff works, I promise. So I offer this to you because I want this for you. So my invitation is to take some of the things that I've given you and do something with it, because it's like the universe is handing something to you on a platter. Take it.